I now want to introduce some guys who are operating on just an absolutely enormous scale. And it is just remarkable to see what they've done. Charlie's had a long career before they started LaTerra, but the run that they've been on, I think pretty much since 2010, 2011 is just incredible in Southern California. So with that, I'd like to welcome out to the stage Charles and Chris Tourtellotte from LaTerra Development. So why don't you sit there, and Charlie, and here you go, and have a seat.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so I think this is our first father-son pairing on stage here at Reconvene. And those of you who've been reading my writing for a long time know that this is like incredibly cool for me. Like my fondest wish is someday I'm up here talking with one of my sons about the business. So it's just really cool. So let's get into it. First of all, I didn't put numbers to it, but maybe you can. Tell us about like the scale of LaTerra these days.
Yeah, sure. So thanks, everybody. So we're based in Los Angeles, and we're a residential and also self-storage development company. And it's probably fair to characterize us as one of the most active development companies, not just in Southern California, but really the southwestern U.S. And we've sort of gone sunbelting, so we've expanded into the Sun Belt. We've got about $2 billion in project value, about 3,000 apartment units in development today. So on the residential side, we've done a lot of JVs with big investment fund managers, institutional groups like the Carlyles and the Clarions of the world. We also have a commitment from a big Canadian pension fund, about $250 million for a build-to-core venture. They upsized that not long ago. And so we've got a lot of great and big JVs. And then we also have this self-storage development venture, which we'll talk more about. But a group out of Australia, an investment bank, committed $300 million to a self-storage venture with us. We've got about 1 million square feet of self-storage in development now across maybe 10 properties, and we're still going. We're still buying and developing storage today. But those are our two big growth verticals. The one thing I left off on the residential side is we also do some BTR, build to rent, and so like we just closed a big JV with an opportunity zone investor. It's 344 units in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and that's under construction right now.
So when I was talking to them in preparation for this, I said, Charlie, you've been on quite a tear. And Charlie, I just think of this as normal. And before we get into it, I just want to remind everyone that I screwed up the Q&A on the last one. For questions, please put it in the app, and then I'll read them out for everyone to answer, so everyone will be able to hear the questions. So I want to before we get to go back to what you're doing today, I kind of want to get a sense for Charlie's career prior to LaTerra, because obviously that informs what you've been able to do since. And we're going to have Chris kind of guide this discussion a little bit. So maybe you could start out, Charlie, though, by giving us a brief introduction to what has been a pretty long career, obviously.
Yeah, so great-looking group here. I listened to a little bit of Logan's presentation, so I hope this goes half as well as that one, or at least half as interestingly. So my career is long, so we're going to try to summarize this into a short little piece. But so I think of my career in a couple of different ways, right? So I started out of business school in working for over the course of like 12 years, 2 Bay Area investment companies, big ones, institutional size. I was an acquisition guy. So I was in really the multifamily acquisition business. I started in the Western US and then ultimately had the whole country really as my territory. So that was a good long career in that business, learned how to underwrite and acquire multifamily, mostly, a little bit of other product types, but mostly multifamily. And so that was really for a good part of my first part of my career. Then after that, I moved to the home building business, which I didn't know anything about, hadn't built anything. So had to learn how to build houses. And that came about because I I just had moved to San Diego, and I ran into a friend who I knew from the multifamily business. He said, look, I've got some land. You've got some money in a balance sheet. Let's go build some houses. And I didn't know what I was getting into. And what I found out was when you're a home builder, you're also a general contractor, and you also sign personally on construction loans. But I found out later the hard way about the personal liability part of that. But we had a successful home building business. I did for many years, 10 years. We built hundreds and hundreds of homes, and we made lots of money until the music stopped in, when was that? 06, 07, maybe 07? We went into the GFC, and I had well in excess of $100 million in loans.
Personally guaranteed.
Personally guaranteed,
Yeah.
I found out. And the banks started visiting me at the office.
And I just want to, like, because I mean, I remember I was getting into the business in '08, and I actually met with some home builders, and like grown men looking like zombies. I mean, that was, I just want to like emphasize, that was a dark time in the home building business.
It was, and you know, I have to say, no bankruptcies, no judgments. Although a lot of my colleagues did go through that, I just couldn't bring myself to it, and I said, no, we're not going there. So we swept up a lot of messes and settled a lot of issues with banks. And I'll just say, I did hear Logan say, that he had good experiences and he meets with his lenders, and I think that's a good idea. Don't get me wrong. I'm a people person. I meet with everybody, and I think it's a good thing to do. My experiences with banks, some were good, some were not as good, right? So. But I'll say we got it all done and got through it, and then restarted again in the next real estate cycle after the GFC, restarted, and that is what is now LaTerra, our current company.
And when I want to talk about this, and I just want to emphasize to everyone because there's people out here in the crowd who are going through, if not maybe quite on the scale that you did, there's people out here who have personally guaranteed bridge loans. There's a lot of our friends. I mean, there's terrible stories on real estate Twitter of some stuff that probably we shouldn't talk about on stage. But there are people who are going through it now, and you went through it, and now to see where you've got back to is really inspiring. And I hope people who are in trouble here or have been through some of this stuff are inspired by what you're about to hear.
Well, if I have any advice, it's take the high road, and I know that's easy to say, super hard to do. Don't hit the exit button.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that. Yeah. So let's talk about how that as the next cycle started and LaTerra begins, and what that first deal, and then how it evolved.
Yeah. So I was up at PGIM, which is the real estate private equity investment division of Prudential Financial. And in 2015, at that time I was a director. I came to PGIM right out of college. My dad gave me the opportunity in 2015 to come join the family biz. And at the time, I called it the 30-year interview. So you can figure out how old I am now. And I said, yes, it was an awesome opportunity. So I came down in 2015. Really, my first big task was to raise the capital for a 228-unit apartment development in Orange County. And we liked the site and the basis, but it was difficult to capitalize. It was kind of on a fringe location, and it was our first multifamily development of scale. So I was out looking for the equity, and I kept hearing no. Like, no, we don't like the location. You guys haven't built any institutional apartments before. No. And my dad, who was very inspiring, was like, just keep at it. Just keep at it. Every no, you'll get closer to yes.
Let me ask, and I know you approached a lot of equity sources. Mechanically, what did that look like? Like, in other words, like, how did you get the list of family offices? How did you get the list of people to approach?
Yeah, I mean, so we kind of hit everybody. We did gauge a capital markets intermediary. They found us the construction debt, and I'll come back to how we solved for that in a minute here. They brought us the construction debt, but they just couldn't get the equity. So I was attending conferences, I was asking other capital markets intermediaries, I was asking my friends. I really just hit everybody with the pitch. And we got 100 no's. I mean, literally, it was 100 no's. And then finally, we got a yes, and we got a term sheet, and we were negotiating the term sheet, signed it. And then during the closing process, we got an email from the principal of that company. He goes, "Oh, I just went to the site, like, we're out. And by the way, I don't think you're going to be able to find the capital for this deal." And I'm like, oh my God. And so I was, first it was anger, right? But that really kind of morphed into motivation. Like, it became my MO. I was like, I'm going to prove this guy wrong. And I sort of used that as my fuel. And I don't know, maybe the 111th, who's counting? But we got a yes. We found the equity for the deal. And we ended up building it for about 70, sold it for about 100. It was a home run deal. Our capital partner made a lot of money. And during that process, we met a co-GP family office. I mentioned the construction loan, and just kind of a bit of advice for folks like, hey, that's great, but like, how are you going to get money for a 200-unit deal? Like, I don't have that kind of wherewithal. Well, the answer is, because we really didn't either. The answer is we found a co-GP. So the lender came up with, they have net worth and liquidity requirements, right? 100% of the loan amount net worth, 10% liquidity. And so we found a co-GP that would put up a balance sheet, no personal guarantees on that one. They put up a balance sheet, provided the net worth and liquidity, funded a substantial portion of the GP equity. That allowed us to get the construction loan. Then we found the equity. So we kind of pieced it together, and it worked.
And I just want to emphasize, you gave the numbers there. It was 70 million in and 100 out, right?
Yep.
But for everyone who is sort of thinking about the math and that, just remember that's levered. That's
levered.
So maybe just high level capital stack there. Like, how much equity was in that 70?
Yeah. So what we had to do is we had a construction loan, and then we had to layer in some mezz because we were just trying to get the highest amount, of capital that we could. And then on top of it, we got about 12 million from a family office in equity, in common equity. So because of that structure, it ended up being, 3-4x on the equity, ended up being the multiple, and it was over a relatively short period of time as well.
And Charlie, let me just jump in here and ask you, after having just lived through this extremely painful process of unwinding the home building business a few years previously, how did you personally get comfortable with signing on both a first and a second construction loan?
I didn't.
Yeah.
Well, we had the first. Actually, the senior was non-recourse. Everything on that was cap stack was non-recourse.
Yeah, it's all been non-recourse. So this is a lesson I learned from my dad, and I've taken it with me, is no personal guarantees. So everything we've done, right? A couple billion in development, huge loans, $198 million loan in Burbank, blah, blah, blah. All that, no personal guarantees.
Whoa.
If I look shell-shocked still from the prior cycle, I am.
It's and this is actually, we didn't discuss this before the talk, but this is a commonality. For those of you who were here last year who have watched the video, Bruce Faraday, who's a gigantic developer as well, has also not signed any personal guarantees. And I'm wondering, because for those of us mortals doing normal sized deals, obviously, like, the bank wants personal guarantee. So how is it the size of the deals? Are you guys using guarantee vehicles? Like, how are you doing it?
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, the bigger you go, the more institutional it is, the kind of less common it is for them to ask for personal guarantees. Seems kind of counterintuitive. But it comes down to the co-GP. So we had this co-GP family office, and there's a lot of them out there. It's not like we found the only one. They are everywhere. And they will put up a balance sheet. Now, they'll take a portion of your promote. Sometimes they want fees, but they'll share in cost overruns. And they put up the balance sheet. And because of the substantive net worth and liquidity on the guarantor's balance sheet, that's the completion guarantee. And they always ask, all right, well, who's on the non-recourse carve-outs? What's the warm body?
But let me just...
And we say, no warm body.
Let's make a distinction, though, Chris, between new construction, ground up new, right? And let's say refining, which we did a lot of, right? In the last year or so. How many refis did we do to pay off our construction loans?
We probably did 7 refis last year, maybe
7.
A couple $100 million. Yeah.
With big time money, right?
Yep.
Like Prudential and some others. How many of those did we need a guarantor?
Well, we needed a guarantor on all of them, but only for non-recourse carve-outs.
Right. That's the distinction I wanted to make. So you do have to have
Someone, yeah.
kind of a guarantor. You can't just go in completely non-recourse.
Yep.
Just making that point.
Yep, but the answer was always no warm bodies. And we always put it in the term sheet, and they always struck it out, and we would always add it back.
Yeah,
and we
that's
go,
right.
all right, you're not getting the deal. This is a non-starter for us. Like, okay, and they'll agree to it.
Yeah, but leading up to that first multifamily deal, there were several years before, while Chris was working for Prudential up in the Bay Area after his college, he interned and then went to work for Prudential for 7 years while he was doing the 30-year interview. I was building a land portfolio, right? So I was buying land from the lenders, some of them who foreclosed on me. All right. They called me, said, Charlie, you did a great job, and that's one of the benefits, right? You did a great job. You were a good guy. We have some land that you might want to buy from us, and it was inexpensive, right? So we bought land very cheaply and built or re-entitled or did the land development on it and sold it to home builders. So I didn't build any homes in that cycle,
Right.
this cycle, but I did re-entitle and sell to home builders. We had $400 million at one point in land, a portfolio of land. And I was selling to, KB Home. I was selling to TriPoint. I was selling to all the big home builders.
Was that your own capital, or did you
No.
raise capital?
We had 2 or 3 different private equity firms that were investing with us, and we made a ton of money. I probably got out too early. I just was getting a little gun shy of the home building business.
Right.
But we came across this one site that Chris referenced.
So you're flipping the land, you're entitling and selling land,
Yep.
making money doing that.
We were the forward planning department for the home building companies. They call me, hey, Charlie, what do you have this month for us?
Right. Okay. And then then you find the multifamily site, and then
that flipped us into the multifamily.
All right.
business.
So let's talk. So you build and you sell that first one.
Yep.
And now you're off to the races.
Yep.
Same co-GP going forward?
Yeah. We did like 17 deals with that co-GP. And what we did then is we started buying unentitled land, and we would process entitlements. Sometimes there'd be bridge debt on the land, which, a riskier model. But that allowed us to have fishing lures to attract excellent LP equity partners, right? Like, platinum name brand LP equity groups like the Carlyles of the world.
You're saying because you had the land and you had the entitlements.
Yeah, we had the land, so we would buy the land, we'd get it fully entitled, it'd be in a shovel-ready condition, and then we would go shop it to equity, and these are awesome locations, right? And we used that to secure these great LP equity partners and construction lenders, and that allowed us to grow and scale.
So I have 2 questions there. First of all, when you're buying were you closing on the land prior to getting the entitlements, or are you were doing that?
In some cases, for a while. Yeah.
Okay, so which is a risk that many builders obviously strongly prefer not to take, but you were willing to take that risk.
Yeah, just to clarify too, and I think you came up with the term entitlement risk light, and the reason is we would only buy sites if we were closing unentitled that had the requisite underlying zoning. So like in Los Feliz, right next to Barnsdale Park.
I love that building.
That was a retail center, but it had underlying residential zoning, and it allowed for 246 units. So we outbid the shopping center buyers. Our downside protection was a shopping center. Like we bought it, it would have been fine. We would have, at a minimum, broke even. So we wouldn't do zone changes, but we did option land to close upon entitlements if we didn't have downside protection.
And for these, for example, for that Los Feliz deal, again, did you raise capital was that your own capital?
We raised it. Yeah, we had the co-GP family office putting in the majority of it.
We have to put in money. I don't know why people make us, but we have to, just to be clear, we have to put some of our own money into deals.
Right.
So.
But let me ask a question, because this is something that I have done a few tiny ground up deals. And the reason I stopped doing them is because I had to raise the money to buy the land. And by the time I got through the process of getting the permits, construction prices had moved, what we were building had kind of changed from that. And I did it twice, and I kind of like disappointed the investors in terms of what the new thing was going to look like, and we ended up just selling the land with the permits and letting someone else build it because it stopped making sense. How did you make sense of the risk there? So you're going to raise the money to buy this thing. You don't know what you're eventually going to be allowed to build.
Well, we tell people, don't try this at home.
So no one do this.
Yeah, we don't want to attract a lot of people into that area, but it's we just once you get comfortable with the system that and that's mainly the city that you're in, and you've done it enough times, and maybe Chris mentioned this, but I think we've entitled 35.
Yeah, 35 in a row with 100% success rate. Where's Wood? Knock on it.
Yeah.
Knock again.
That's not Wood. And so once you know the system and you've done it enough times successfully, then you're able to evaluate the risk, and it always has risk, always, and there's always challenge. And today it's harder than ever to entitle. And so our business model always changes. We don't do things today the same way we did back in the day. So we're not buying unentitled land today.
Right.
Generally, we're really not even developing ground up new today.
Except storage. Yeah.
Except storage,
right.
Generally.
Right.
Our model today for our residential program is we're buying existing. And that's new for us, right? That's brand new. We're starting a fund to buy existing buildings today. Why? Because in general, cheaper to buy than it is to build, generally.
I want to get into this entitlement question, though, because in talking to both of you previously, obviously this is like really the special sauce, let's say. And clearly some of it is just that first Charlie and now you, Chris, have had a bunch of experience. You've been around this particular block many times. Who is the team that you work with? Like, do you use the same architect every time? Is it the same expediters? How does this work?
Let me take the first part of that, and Chris, you can, I'm sure, add some to this without doubt. We use a lot of the same consultants, outside consultants, for entitlement work, and we always have entitlement work, especially now in the storage area. So yes, we try to rinse and repeat on that as much as possible, right? Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. And then the architect is often a choice based on the product type and the jurisdiction that we're in. And we have a great in-house team as well. We have really good land use counsel. We meet with the cities. We get their buy-in. We go in person. We don't just send our consultants, right? So they get the human effect. But we always want to sit down with the council office or the planning staff and really make sure we have their support, which we've been able to do very successfully.
The most important thing is who is the team on the ground in the jurisdiction that you're working in, and it's the most important thing. We entitled one in Albuquerque in a master plan for 342 units that we're now under construction on, build to rent. We entitled one in Irving, Texas, where they said it just couldn't be done for self-storage. We did it, right? But it's, again, who do you have on the ground in that local area?
Do you ask the local authorities, the politicians, whatever, do you ask them for what they would like to see built there?
You have to. You have to, I kind of call it the three-legged stool, at least in LA. You've got the council office, you've got the planning staff, and then the neighborhood group.
Yep.
Those are the three you need to have.
So you're going and meeting with them and trying to come up with a plan that kind of that.
You got to have all three to hold the project up.
Sometimes you hear things like, well, we'd love to see 200,000 square feet of office, right?
And we'd love to see a new park.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to talk about the move into storage, because obviously, Charlie, you had a long career in multifamily acquisitions. You built homes, which it's not the same as multifamily, but you can see the whole thing hangs together.
Yeah, housing is used to be my thing, still is.
Right, but now you've got this like serious ground up storage JV going on, And I want to hear about the genesis of that, because, and let me just give you, just to explain why. I think a lot of people here, myself included, we had a good run in whatever we were doing up to whatever it is, up to 22 or whatever. And now many of us are kind of looking in some ways at pivoting either to a different market or a different product type. And you've like very successfully done this. So I want to kind of use this storage move as a kind of a jumping off point for talking about that process, that pivot.
Yeah. Yeah. So when COVID hit, we knew we wanted to diversify geographies, right? So we went more suburban. But we also had an interest in a different product type. So we actually had engaged an Australian investment bank to help us find a single source, build-to-core apartment, a pension fund. We wanted to cut out the middleman, these investment fund managers, and sync up with the pension fund. This Australian company was successful. They introduced us to a Canadian pension fund. They committed $250 million in equity for the build-to-core apartment venture. That went really well. And then this Australian company approached us and said, we've got a keen interest in the self-storage product type, and my response was, as do we. It's complementary to residential. It doesn't compete. Where there's rooftops, you need storage. We should discuss, forming a JV together, right? We sort of pounced on that opportunity.
What I love about this, so sorry to interrupt you, but I had this experience at a much smaller scale, and I did the wrong thing, which is to say that if you have smart capital that comes to you and proposes to do something, you should take that seriously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the way I like to describe it, Moses, is Chris tells the story slightly differently. I'm a little less modest about it. I say they called us and said, hey, we think Southern California is the best place for this platform. We got $300 million. Do you want to be our partner? And I said, can you hold on a second? Okay.
Yeah, I've written about this. It's like say yes to the capital, and then
whatever the capital wants to do, that's what we want to do.
Because you guys didn't even have. I know subsequently you recruited people, but you didn't have storage people on your team.
No, we didn't. And you're of course paraphrasing a little. We did write a whole white paper and a thesis as soon as we, demonstrated our interest, and we tied up 3 storage deals, and we negotiated.
All right, it wasn't that simple.
It wasn't, but no, but the point is well taken, right? Which is, what do you want to do? What the capital wants to do, right? I think that's a good thing. Yeah. So we didn't have a storage team, and so as the capital came together, we tied up 3 deals, which we had under an option to purchase upon entitlements. So we had some money at risk, but those were our fishing lures. So then we negotiated this JV, we got it signed up, and then we quickly needed somebody who really knew the self-storage product type. So rather than engage a recruiter, I literally went on LinkedIn, I knew Public Storage, they're based in Glendale, big company. I found the head of development at Public Storage in the Western US, and I sent him a LinkedIn message, and I was just like, hey, we're putting together a self-storage platform. We've got the capital. This is going to be big. Join the rocket ship. Would love to have you on board. Are you interested in a call? And he wrote back. He said, sure. So we did the phone call, and that actually is what led to us hiring the head of our storage division. And then he subsequently hired a few people, and now we have this little division. So.
Amazing. So before we hit to the Q&A, and we've got tons of questions, I just want to, and this is out of personal interest, the father-son dynamic. How do you, obviously we've all heard stories about both good and bad, but honestly many bad, about this. Like, how you guys are both on your own accomplished people. You had a career before you started working with your dad. Like, walk me through how you avoid killing each other.
We don't. No. Look here. Basically, it's a simple answer. Chris took the initiative, or it came from his own initiative. When I had the home building company, Chris started. He was in high school, and he started at my home building company. We put him out in the field on the job site, and he liked it. And then, for a while, then he came back and worked inside. and people wanted him. He was so good, he was so motivated. He worked in the accounting department, he worked in the development department. Everybody wanted him to work in their department. And then he went to college, and then he got the internship, and he got the big job. And it really was his own, came from him just wanting to do it. And I just exposed him to the opportunity.
So, okay, so that's from Charlie's perspective. Now, Chris, when you, did you recognize immediately that what your dad was doing was super cool and something you wanted to be involved with? Was it a conscious decision? Are you just a conscientious person, so it was like, do this, and then you were just a conscientious participant?
No, I mean, I observed it, and my dad's always been a role model of mine, and so I thought this was cool, and I wanted to learn more about it. I did go after college, which was around the GFC time. I did go. Went to Cal Poly, then I went up to work with PGIM. And I think that helps because otherwise people might think, geez, did like the apple fall far from the tree? It's the sun, you know what I mean? Like a lot of people might question the competence of the sun if that's the only thing they've ever done. Rightly or wrongly, we don't know. But no, it's been awesome. I mean, yes, like any father-son dynamic, I'm sure there's times where, my dad's like, I wouldn't let any other employee talk to me like that, but you're my son. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, my boss is talking to me like my dad. It is my dad, right? But we don't mind that. Like, I actually think it's fun. Like, I think it's really cool. And I think our capital likes the legacy piece of the business. I think we found that investors seem to like it, and we love it. It's been really, really special.
And Chris brings a great perspective from having worked at PGIM, a different, more institutional sort of perspective. I came from the school of I eat what I kill, and although I did work at an institutional shop for many years, that was so long ago I can't remember. So Chris brings a good modern sort of institutional view to the table.
So I want to move because we got a bunch of questions. I want to get into as many of them as we can. My friend Dave Gordon, who's a developer here in LA as well, and who has his own scars from as you guys do from this process here, asks, with how competitive GCs are in SoCal, why did you in-house the construction?
Yeah, it was out of necessity, not for the fee streams. So we found that on our projects where we were using third-party GCs, there were constantly issues that would arise pertaining to budget and schedule, and the GCs would prioritize change orders over the project. So it was really like they'd hold you hostage. It wasn't, let's keep the project moving and talk about this change order and figure it out. It was, whoa, like maybe we'll stop working or slow down, right? So that's really frustrating. Then we hired construction managers to sit on the job full time, which you have to do. And then we had one, and then we had two. And then we go, and then our CMs are like, yeah, we're kind of doing a lot of the
doing
work,
the GC's job
but we're
for them.
paying the CM. And then we go, maybe we should be doing this ourselves, right? It sort of morphed into it gradually. Is that how you sort of?
Yeah, no, that's right. And some of the smaller jobs. We had smaller GCs, and they were kept falling down.
And so, let me just now I'm interested. So I'm going to ask my own follow-up question. Did you bring on as construction managers people who had been GCs themselves before, so they came in with subs that they could call, or how did you manage that part of the process?
Yeah, in fact, when I was at PGIM, one of our development partners was Wood Partners. And when I came down to LaTerra, I remembered a construction guy from Wood that I really liked. He actually was overseeing their self-perform division. And I called him, took him out to breakfast. And he was actually one of our early hires on our construction management division. And he had his license. And so ultimately, he was able to step into the role of that entity, the GC.
Got it. Okay, I actually have a million questions, but I'm gonna actually let I'm gonna take care of the audience here. So Ryan Auger asks, and he's in the storage business. How are you underwriting storage given that the advertised rents are so irrelevant?
That is a good question. And ECRIs, right? Existing customer rate increases. And so if you can get your hands on a rent roll from a property, what you'll see is that the in-place rents are way higher than the street rates. And so you have to kind of understand how that works, but he's right. I mean, street rates are way down, but they get you in, and then the tenants are so sticky that then they increase rents like 30% in year one. That's not when it's in our pro forma, but they do it. And so all of a sudden your rent, it's growing very quickly, right? Street rates versus what's in place.
So how do we do it?
Yeah, I mean, how we do it is we underwrite what we call ECRIs. You have market rent growth, which is modest, and then you have ECRIs. You have your street rates, and then you kind of come up to market, and so you get physically stabilized, which is leased, and then you get to economic stabilization, and that's when you're really ratcheting it up.
Correct me if I'm wrong, public storage. Is it public storage that's managing most of your stuff?
It is, yeah.
And do they provide you with some of this some of this data?
Yeah, they'll give you, exactly. Yep, they will. You engage them as a PM. They'll give you their pro forma. They have the ECRIs in there. So yeah, you can get that data. Yep.
Got it. Okay. Moving on to parenthetically, Dave Gordon asks, which is your favorite department in LA, DWP or urban forestry?
Oh my gosh.
The clear winner is DWP.
I mean, DW, just to insert myself here, every developer in LA has horror stories about having fully built buildings and they're waiting months for DWP to basically connect the utilities.
But in fairness, we have a big project in Burbank, so BWP is running a close second.
Or first.
Okay, so Ben Lieb asks, given the scale of your development pipeline, and I think by which he means more like the size of the large size of these projects, where are you finding the land? Like, walk us through that acquisition process.
Whoa. We can't give all our secret sauce up. But go ahead, Chris.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, so from my perspective, it makes a lot more sense to do larger projects than small projects because your dollar per hour is going to be way high. It's just as hard to do a 20-unit deal as a 200-unit deal. So you might as well do a 200-unit deal and figure out how to scale it with the co-GP and the cap stack. You can do it. And in my opinion, it's not more difficult to find a site that can accommodate more units than it is really a small site, right? I mean, we've gone more suburban a bit, so like it's a little bit easier on a garden-style deal in Riverside. But we have a good network of brokers that brings us deals off market. Sometimes like architects might be doing a yield study for a landowner, and we know them, and they call us. They're like, "Hey, this guy might sell." So we have long tentacles into the market, but I don't think it's harder to find bigger sites necessarily.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And especially now in storage, because we have a capital source, we're more deal constrained than we are capital constrained.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And last thing is we have a JV with the owner of Fry's Electronics, right? The big electronics store chain. And as a result of that JV, we have various Fry's Electronics sites, 10 to 20 acres. Those are big. That he'll put them into a JV with us, the family. We'll process entitlements, then we'll bring in equity. So those are big. So beast a bit.
Let me ask another follow-up question of my own. Internally, when you so someone sends you a piece of land, what is that underwriting, that initial pass underwriting process look like, and who does it? Like, are you sitting there with an Excel figuring out, okay, here's how many units we can build, or is there someone on your team who's doing it?
Yeah, it used to be me. Like when I came down from PGIM, it was me. We had a small company. As we've grown and scaled, we have an analyst who focuses on the multifamily. We have another one who focuses on the self-storage division. And they're very good at doing the first pass. Like now you need like a 7 untrended return on cost. We know what it costs to build. So it's called a static model. It's one page. It's simple. You have rents, you have revenues, operating expenses, costs, and you come up with a return on cost. And if it passes that first test, then we elevate it to the next level and put it into the full 10-year DCF model, and then I'll sit down with them and go through it. We will together.
Yeah, but before we get an analyst busy on that doing numbers, has to go through some kind of a management screening to make sure it's where we want to be and it's what we want, because there's a lot of stuff that comes through the email.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so with that screening before the analyst, is that mostly like a location that you're thinking of?
It's mostly location and size, yeah. And zoning and, is it going to be a heavy lift or a light lift?
And can you tell, at this point in your career, can you just look at something and like within pretty quickly be like, yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I guess, Dan Erb asks, what advice would you give to a younger version of yourself when it comes to pitching before you had an established track record?
Comes to pitching, like
Yeah.
pitching capital, or just
Pitching
generally?
capital, pitching capital.
Well, I think you want to present the information in a way that that they want to see it. You want to think about the audience. You want to present it in a way that they want to see it, and then you want to be excited and enthusiastic about it, because that's contagious, right? So if you're excited, other people pick it up, and that really comes through on the phone. So you want to believe in it and be excited. And then the last thing I'll say, and really this is, I learned from you, relentless persistence. I got easily discouraged in the beginning, like, oh my God, like 12 people have said no in a row, like this isn't going to work, right? And I really realized that 100 no's, like you got to go through that sometimes, right? So relentless persistence, I guess, is where I would arrive.
This is a message that I'm really glad that we're amplifying, because it's something that I'm guilty of, is like 2 potential partners say no, and I'm like, fuck it, we're never going to capitalize.
Yeah, this deal's
thing.
going to be impossible, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Chris said it earlier, every no gets you closer to yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think, and a follow-up from Dan, which I think is really a great one. What do you think the biggest mistake that you've made raising capital? I mean, I guess Charlie's had a longer experience of this. You've sort of started a little bit more recently. From your perspective, like, what have you done wrong that you've learned to fix?
Yeah, I mean, I think negotiating the right terms, even if it means potentially losing out on a capital partner, sticking by what you believe in. Like, for example, in development, you should be thinking about pilot error and mechanical error, right? Like if you do something wrong and there's a cost overrun, the equity is going to look, to you to cover that. But if it's something that's outside of your control, unknown subsurface conditions, city inspector comments, whatever it is, like that's typically a shared cost. There are some LPs who take, a more firm position that, like, we don't share in anything, right? Or what about interest rate increases, right? So I think you really got to stick by your guns, even if you think you might lose that capital partner. Personal guarantees are another one, right? Like my dad's philosophy was always hard no. And there were times when I was like, no, but we need this lender, like we need it because it's going to solve, and he's like, no, you know what I mean?
And better not to do the
and
deal.
Sometimes those lenders have backdoor sort of provisions in the carve-outs to full recourse. So you got to read everything and make sure you stick to your guns.
Yeah. I guess final question. You mentioned before that you've pivoted to acquisitions, and as you said, it's probably cheaper to buy them now than to build them in many cases. What are you looking for? How are you underwriting this as is it like a 3 to 5 year, 7 year hold type IRR type standard underwriting? Like tell us about that program and what you're looking for.
Yeah, I'm going to let Chris give you that because I think he's probably pretty fired up on that. But I'll just leave you with this thought. For me, it's getting back to basics. That's what I did for many, many years in the beginning of my career. And I'll just say I'm finding joy in the entire journey, which really has, kind of propelled me to be where I am today. So that's I feel like I've come home.
Yeah, no, that's good. And it's a couple things. We can buy brand new Class A apartments that have just been built for 20 to 30%. Really, values are down 30%. We can buy them for 20% less than replacement cost. The issue in some of these markets like Dallas and others is there's a lot of supply, so concessions are heavy. So we do look at, yes, of course, we look at the in-place cap rate, yes, but we also look at the year 2 and year 3. Once the product's been absorbed, that's coming online right now, some of the concessions go away, the market stabilizes. Like, where are we going to end up? Not with aggressive rent growth, but where are we going to end up? And we look at that year 3, and if we can get to a 6-ish, depends on the market. In year 3, to us, that feels really good, especially because no new product's going to be coming online in 26, 27. So we think we'll have market tailwinds. So we're kind of looking out to year 3, stabilized return on cost.
Thank you both so much. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.